I leave them to introduce themselves. Over to you, Janet.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to our public speaking presentation. My name is William Hall, and I'm the chairman of the Year 8 Clares Court public speaking team. Our topic today will be on the graveyard. Should people be cremated, dug up, or buried on top of relatives? On my left I have Oliver Constantine, who will be our vote of thanks today. And on my right is Charlie, who will be our main speaker. Charlie is a good friend of mine. He's witty, intelligent, and a very caring young man. Charlie is qualified to speak on this topic because he is a member of the public and, surprisingly, will die. Everyone will receive taxes, but we will also receive death too. Death by banging into a wall, death by jumping too high, death by your afro growing too long. Sorry, Charlie. All these ways may seem funny, but inevitably they're not. Think of one of your relatives dying. It'd be a very sad occasion. There'd be a burial or some kind of funeral, and at the burial the coffin would be placed in a pit, the mud and dirt scattered back over, and a headstone placed at the top. But there will be no more space for these coffins if we can't dig old ones up or bury people on top of relatives. What will happen then? My grandma is Swiss, and when her stepmom died, she was buried. Out in Switzerland, they dig up old graves that have been lying there every 20 to 25 years. I know if we did that, people would get upset. Anyway, it's now time to pass you over to Charlie Gowland to deliver our main speech and continue on this, excuse the pun, grave matter.
Thank you, Will. Today, ladies and gentlemen, as Will said, I'm going to talk to you about a rather grisly topic. Strangely for this competition, it's something that I don't want to talk about, because it's something that we don't want to think about. It's death. But I'm not talking about death per se, I'm talking more about where we go when we die. And I'm not talking about heaven, hell, or reincarnation. I mean, where do we physically go? The graveyards of Great Britain are filling up. If you'll excuse the pun, people are literally dying to get in. A BBC survey has shown that half of cemeteries in the UK could run out of space in the coming decades. Even more urgently, a quarter of local authorities say that they would have no more room for space for burials within the next 10 years. Plans to reuse graves by burying original occupants deeper in their plots are being considered by many councils. Some European countries already dig up the buried and reuse the graves. We need to find another way to get rid of the corpses. Perhaps we could look abroad for ideas. For example, we could bury people at sea, or feed their bodies to vultures as they do in the Himalayas. A commonly done thing in Europe was to bury people under the church floors. And this was all well and good, but there was only so much room. Penny Coleman in Corpses, Coffins and Crypts, A History of Burial in 1997, said, in time the whole floor got higher, almost sometimes to the point of meeting the lower windows of the church. Alternatively, we could choose a path that was indicated by Jeremy Clarkson, the popular presenter of the driving television show Top Gear, when he wrote about a group of Belgian undertakers who announced that they would soon be offering the dead a third way, instead of cremation or burial. It is called resumation, and the process involves placing a corpse into a silk bag with some water and some potassium hydroxide until they turn into a greenish-brown paste. This raises a lot of interesting questions, such as what about having respect for the dead, or what if one of the more dense undertakers mistakes them for parsley sauce? Mostly the former. As we answer this question, we have to think more about what people believe in terms of the afterlife. A group known as Jehovah's Witnesses refuse cremation, as they do not wish to be buried incomplete. This would seem to indicate that they believe you move on to the next life with the same body that you used in this one. This would make the resummation idea poor, as you'd be travelling around in an eternity of comfort and happiness as an amorphous blob. However, you could also bring yourself to believe that God is almost always purported to be omnipotent. You would probably think of something in the eventuality that you arrive in the land of milk and honey as a form of sauce. What about you? What plans have you got for your own demise? A newspaper asked members of the public how they would like to be disposed. Some of the more humorous ones include more Viking funerals, huge funeral pyre aboard a long ship pushed down the River Thames. Or, I'd like my ashes scattered over Anne Robinson. I never liked her. Or, a green burial. I can offset some of the environmental damage I've caused in my lifetime by feeding a tree. In all seriousness though, the local councils probably need to come up with a plan fairly soonish, or we may be shot into space or fed to a bear. To me, the magnum opus country for strange burials would have to go to the Philippines. Each part of the Philippines have their own unique ways of handling with the deceased, such as burying people under the kitchen, or in a hollowed-out tree trunk, or my favourite, the Tingwins, who sit the deceased in a chair, put them in their best clothes and put a lit cigarette in their lips. When I asked my mum, she said this to me: when the time comes, put me in a cardboard box and bury me in the garden, with a tree planted on top. Then sell the house, and if they're a horrible family, I'll have some fun haunting them. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, burials really are down to those left behind, and religion and tradition, of course, play vital roles in the funerals. I'll leave you with this final thought from Japan. 99.85% of all Japanese are cremated. In most of these cases, the cremated remains are placed in an urn, then deposited in a family grave. In recent years, however, alternative methods of burial have gained in popularity. Such methods include scattering of the ashes, burial in outer space, and conversion of the cremated remains into a diamond that can be set in jewellery. When my mum heard this, she thought this was a great idea. Turn me into a diamond, she said, an engagement ring for someone you love. Then I can be at the wedding, be with the family, and giggle at the speeches. Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen.
And I believe Mr. Blackford has a question for Charlie.
I have, but I'd say first of all that I thoroughly enjoyed that, except you reminded me that I'm probably the oldest person in the room. Which means I have to make a decision rather sooner than you do. On the basis of the options you listed there, I think the Viking funeral sounds wonderful. I think, since you put me on the spot, I have to ask you what your favourite would be. You've got plenty of time to think about it.
Well, if I would have to choose, I would probably do the Tingwin way. Yeah. It just sounds quite interesting, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Blackford, and thank you again, Charlie. I now pass you over to the capable hands of Oliver Constantine, who will deliver the vote of thanks. I'm sorry to start on such a comical note, but now for a joke. What's the difference between a funeral director and the England cricket team? Well, the funeral director, he won't lose the ashes. Thank you, Charlie. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honour to be the vote of thanks to Charlie. He's really impressed me with his research and delivery. Quotes, statistics, and facts were really top class. Charlie found it very hard writing about this subject. Even though he's an excellent writer and comical by nature, he found it so hard because he found it so darn depressing. The most alarming statistic I found was the decades. In the coming decades, half the graveyards in Britain will be full. A particularly poignant point that I found that was very interesting was how different countries bury their deceased. How in Japan, 99.85% of people get cremated, and how
In the Himalayas, they feed their deceased vultures. Imagine thousands of vultures roaming around Britain, eating all the dead people in all the fields. The destruction of death. The amount of destruction that death can cause to a family, and then have no space to lay their loved ones to rest, it's just unacceptable. And that is why we chose this as our topic. As I started off with a joke, I might as well finish with one. What do you call a wife who knows where her husband is every night? Well, it's called a widow. Thank you very much for listening, and can you please help me in thanking Charlie Allen for his wonderful speech.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming tonight. That concludes our presentation. I hope you have a safe journey home.
Thank you.